I'm live, apparently. It's not like a diagnosis. I know that I'm living. It's just I think we're live. In theory, right now. Um, Happy Friday to everybody tuning in. It is Friday. Pretty great. As always, at this point, it's an established fact that I'm going to give you Connor's completely uh unobjective weather report. Unobjective weather report. It's raining. And that's really great. That objectively, that's true. It's great. This now we're getting into editorializing, but oh my gosh, it's been cool all week. And so for those of you watching, isn't that great? Because man, it was so hot. And now look at this. Is this you can't if you're driving and watching this, do not look at this. But if you are, this is not the most breathable fleece I own, right? So I get to slowly we're accessorizing. It's great. Welcome to another episode of Here For It, a live Q&A with Connor. I am, as always, here for it. I have got one question. I had a single submission this week. Good news, it's a doozy. I'm talking 3 paragraphs of questions. So I'm not going to read it all because that would be not fair to you or me. This question is talking about really there's a couple of things that I want to discuss with this question. Um, it's talking about trauma. How do I share the things that I've been through? What are disclosures that I can kind of make with clients? What may be appropriate? What may be inappropriate? How do we handle these sorts of things? Oh my gosh, huge topic. So, uh, um, let's dive into it because we've got the time to dive into it. So kind of the first question that comes across here is um sort of a in this question is a struggle about when to share their own experiences with their clients, if at all. This email references like I don't want to really trauma dump on my clients, but I have similar experiences sometimes with them, and I want to be able to commiserate. And I think that that's fair. Things to keep in mind when it comes to this. First off, at the correct time, in the correct context, I think that there can actually be a benefit to a thoughtful self-disclosure, right? However, I think that that is actually much more limited than people might think. And I want to get at this. The main thrust of what I'll be talking about today when it comes to how do I share my experiences with my clients and what can I tell them about when things that are similar have happened to me is there is a distinct difference for me between sharing my experience verbally and being able to empathize and commiserate with my clients and treat them the way perhaps I wish I had been treated when I was going through this, right? And so I think that there's a practice of empathy that comes through with this, right? And so I think oftentimes you feel like the only way that I am maybe able to share my experiences by verbalizing, hey, I've been through this too. And actually another way that you can address this and handle this with clients is instead of saying that, be the support for them that you maybe wish you had when you were going through this, right? And it doesn't need to be verbalized, but it can be actualized through how it is you're helping them, the way that you talk to them about it, right? Um, for those of you who may or may not be in the know, there's something called like trauma informed care, right? And it's this broad sort of social work framework for addressing things with clients where a lot of the goal is to sort of not, if they're going through something that's very traumatic or they have been through something very traumatic, you don't want to re-traumatize them, right? And so one of the reasons why I mention maybe not verbalizing what it is you've been through is that you run the risk first and foremost of maybe bringing that trauma up again with a client and saying, oh well, now it's everybody that I know, and the only lens they may see me through now is through this trauma that I've experienced, right? And I want to get away from that. I think staying away from that can be important, particularly if I'm working with a client that I may not have the best relationship with, or I'm newer to, I don't immediately want to make it feel like for them that I'm solely seeing them through the lens of historically what's happened to them kind of on their worst days, right? So I would say probably avoid a whole lot of that sort of trauma dumping. However, there are other small ways that you can address that maybe you've been through similar experiences without outright saying, oh, this happened exactly to me, right? I don't know how to even get to a food shelf. Well, when I've needed to apply, this is what I did, right? And right there, it kind of addresses that this is maybe a shared experience without making it the highlight of the sentence that I'm saying and the action that we're taking. Instead, it's really to give context to say, you know what? This is what we should do because I've also been through this a little bit, right? Without necessarily outright stating it, without making it the subject, right? By saying, hey, you know, when I've had to go through this, these are the things that I have had to do. This is how I've handled it. These are the resources that have been very helpful to me, right? Instead of making it sort of the direct subject of those sentences and saying, "Oh, well, when I've been going through this kind of difficulty, this is what I do." And that then becomes kind of the discussion for the day. Hey, I've been through this. Oh, really? Tell me about when you've been through it. Well, this is what I've experienced, right? I can share my experience in a very secondary way, right? So I would say avoid, trauma dumping on clients. That would not be, I think, the most helpful. But I think that there are little ways that you can begin to connect with clients over maybe some shared experiences. So I would say that's been the first part, right? You can integrate your experience with some of these programs or with some of these situations in ways that don't necessarily need to directly address your experience with them, right? Whether that is, again, through sort of a practiced empathy of saying, hey, you know what? I'm not even going to mention to my client that I've been through this, but I am going to treat them the way that I feel I wish I had been treated when I was with this. Or these are resources that would have been helpful for me when I was going through this. I'm just going to share them with my client, right? I'm going to lead them to finding these sort of services and supports and whatever it might be. Um, or I might, in very small ways, just sort of season my discussion with my client with little tidbits that, like, maybe this is some firsthand experience that I've had, or maybe it's experience that I've had secondhand from people around me. Where again, the focus isn't necessarily that I've been through it; it's that here's how it helped client through this based on my experience, right? Um, the second part of the question is kind of getting at a little bit more of that shared experience bit. How do I might want to let my clients know that I've been through this. And there's a conflict, right? I get it. I don't want my clients to feel alone in their experiences either, right? And I think that really kind of the thrust of this second part of the question, is maybe creating this sense that my clients aren't alone in what it is they're experiencing, and they aren't alone in having these things happen to them, and they aren't alone in navigating it. And I think that you can effectively demonstrate those things without outright stating, "Hey, me too, dude," right? Um, Again, the best thing that I can do is actively listen to my clients. Whatever it is they're experiencing. One of the worst things that I when I was a case manager, and even here, one of the phrases that I really tried to get away from is saying something like, "Oh, I understand." Because even if we've had the same experience, it has not been, through the same lens, and it is not with the same personal history and the same, relationships that I have. Like there are obviously big differences between uh my lived experience and other people's lived experiences. So even if you've gone through sort of the same difficult situation, your life and your clients' lives might be different. And so saying something like, "Oh, I understand," or "Oh, I've been there," might actually end up sounding a little bit dismissive to your clients. It might sound like, "Yeah, dude, I've already been there. I've already been through it. It's all right." And instead, I would really want to make that client feel, I think, very, very heard, and acknowledging that even if I've been through similar experiences, I haven't lived their same life, right? And so they might be feeling this very differently or experiencing this in a very different lens and context than I did when I was going through it, right? And so I want to be careful about how I address that with my clients. There's also a bit of this in the latter part of this question about authenticity and connecting with your clients. And I think that that maybe self-disclosure does help a bit with that connection. And I think that it can be a tool in the toolkit, but it would be a tool that I very, very rarely access, because when I am sharing information like that, this goes to boundaries, right? When I'm sharing information like that, like if my client says to me, "Oh, my dad wasn't very present for me when I was a kid," and I look at that client, I go, "Oh, wild, mine neither." That's something you might share with a friend or a family member, not something that you would probably share necessarily with a coworker or somebody who's just kind of, a little bit in your life. For the record, my dad was a great dad. I don't want to throw him under the bus. Very present for me as a kid. So I don't want to, especially on YouTube, throw my dad. He's great. But if that were to be the case, right? That's a disclosure that I might tell friends or family members. And so when I disclose that to a client, it might sometimes really make that boundary feel a little bit more like, well, we're friends more than you're a support for me and you're helping me work through this stuff, right? And so I want to be really careful when I'm making those disclosures, right? Because I want to make it clear when I'm working with my clients that we're working together, and this is a professional relationship. And that doesn't mean that it can't be friendly and special and unique and supportive and all of these excellent things, but it fits into a box, and that box is my job, right? And I want my clients to be able to have a variety of relationships and not get their supports and their friendship from the same person, right? So while I want to make a connection with my clients, I need that connection to be professional. I need that connection to be, something that doesn't blur the lines necessarily between uh, me as a worker and me as a potential friend, right? I think you can, however, be your authentic self and represent your authentic experiences with going through some of these similar things with your clients. Again, without directly bringing it up, with saying, you know what, when I was going through this, having somebody in my life who would have pointed me in the right direction, or who would have listened to me when I was going through this, or who would have gone out of their way to make sure that I don't feel judged for going through what I'm going through, or hurting the way that I'm hurting, or listening to me when I feel like no one is listening, or any of that. You can integrate that in the way that you work with your client. You are able to integrate that into overall the way that you provide services without it making a big self disclosure, right? Um, to boil it down, I suppose, self run the real risk of making that session a little bit more about you, right? And I really want my clients to know that when I'm working with them, this time is theirs. This time is for them. This time is for me to support them in all the different ways that I'm supposed to. And it's not about me. And I think that it takes a skilled hand and a really important situation that are, I think, more rare than we might expect, for me to feel comfortable making a self-disclosure, right? And even when I do make a disclosure like that, I need to be very careful that I kind of stake out what that disclosure means, because clients might infer other things, right? If I am I don't know, if I'm talking to a client and maybe I share an experience where I say, "Hey, yeah, I was homeless for a while," or whatever. Clients might make inferences about that too. They might say, "Well, why were you homeless and what was going on? And are you actually, oh, is there more to this story than I think?" And it creates this intrigue that again focuses a bit more on me the staff than it does the client and what it is we're trying to work through. And so I am very careful if I'm ever doing a self-disclosure because I think that it does run the risk of making the session feel much more about me than it does about my client. That does not, again, mean that I can't make a connection with them. That does not mean that I cannot utilize and integrate my experiences with all of these different, lived things that I've been through. It informs the way that I talk to people. It informs the way that I view the work that I do and the things that I have to talk to my clients about. Um, so it is still authentic, right? Um, you can still be your authentic self without going into every detail and without doing a lot of personal disclosures, right? You can still be authentically kind and empathetic, and you can authentically commiserate with a client in their experiences and the difficulties that they may be going through without explicitly stating, hey, this is why I'm able to be these sorts of things with you, right? So I think that this is a tough thing for a lot of people to handle in this field broadly, right? Oftentimes we are motivated to help people because of experiences we have been through, right? Um, and there are some people who would argue that it's through that shared experience that I can make an authentic connection with my clients, and I'm able to do that, right? Um, when I was doing undergraduate work, I know that it was very common for a lot of people in licensed drug and alcohol counseling classes to have gone through similar lived experiences, right? Um, and so there are, I think, parts of this field that may value that shared experience. But I think for me, it becomes a boundary issue, and I think that here at the very least, um, I am looking to support my clients. I am not looking to make my sessions or my disclosures or the time that we spend together much more about me. Not that I'd let my clients know nothing about me in my life, right? Um, I think that there is a portion here about wanting, to let my clients know, kind of who I am, um, and I think that that's fair. But there are boundaries to it, right? I say this during training, and I think I've said this in a Q&A before, but when I'm looking to connect with my clients, oftentimes what I try to do is I share interests with my clients. I don't share experiences, right? They like bowling. I'm a big bowler. I love to sit during a sport. I love to eat during a sport. I love that it's called a sport, even though it's a lot of sitting and eating in my case, right? Um, that's something that I might connect with the client about, right? Oh, we've got a shared interest. Awesome. I want to avoid necessarily those shared experiences because I think that shared experiences saying, "Oh, I've been in the same case. That sounds like me." Again, begins to wear down that barrier that this is a professional service and I am not their friend. I am here as a support. I am here in a capacity to help them and not to talk about myself and not to say and not to, really make it there. So I would be very in summation, Connor, you've rambled for 19 minutes and like 5 seconds. Yeah. Um, in summation, how do we tie a nice neat bow on this? Um, I would say generally speaking, be very careful about those disclosures. I would say probably do not make them. Unless there is an incredible opportunity where you can, I think, really stake out that this is coming from a professional. Uh, this is nothing else you're going to know about my life. Like I think that staking all of that out is very difficult. So I err on the side of probably don't do that. However, that does not invalidate the experiences that you have, nor does it render them as in any way unuseful for the work that you are doing. And I think that it makes it. I think it's very helpful for the work that we do, because it again informs you How would I have wanted to be treated? What would have been helpful for me? And integrating that in with the way that you support your clients is, I think, a very, very helpful thing to be able to do. And if nothing else, you can leave them feeling heard and feeling validated, and anything that you may not have had when you were going through this, you might be able to potentially provide more for your clients and be aware of. So generally, I would say please avoid big disclosures like that. There are other ways that we can integrate those into how we support our clients. And I think that it's really more of a reframing as to how I can utilize my past experiences and the things that I've been through to support my clients, rather than there's really only one modality, which is letting a big disclosure come out. Right. Um, so I want to thank you, staff person who asked this question. You ask killer questions, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness in here. And I want to encourage anybody who's listening or watching, um, for future Q&As. Even if you have big, deep questions, I would love for you to share those with me. I would love for you to send me those questions, email me those questions, because we can explore that together here. This doesn't always have to be just kind of like here's a resource. And good luck. It can be. I'm thrilled to do that. But I don't want you to shy away from maybe more heady topics. And so if you want to send questions like that for any future Here For It's, please, I'm here for it. That's what I'm here for, genuinely. Like, I want to unpack these sorts of things. So thank you for submitting this question. Thank you for bearing with me for a lovely 21 minutes and 50 seconds, while I've kind of just been rambling about a single topic. I am always thrilled to entertain these questions. And if there is any follow up that you ever want, if this sparked a question for you, or follow up that you want to have, feel free to shoot me an email. I am thrilled to be able to answer questions like this. I am all about it. It is like my favorite thing to do. So please, please, please send me your questions. Send me your thoughts. Send me anything you want me to unpack. That's what I'm here for. That's why we have Here For It, a live Q&A with Connor. Thank you all for tuning in. I know this is a little bit of a shorter one, but you know what? I feel like it was a heavy topic, and I feel like there's a lot to talk about with it. And so, if there's any more discourse, please feel free, send me emails. But I want to thank you all for tuning in, for everybody who tuned in, for everybody who's watching from your car or at home. I'm so sorry for the volume. I know that I talk very loud. I hope that you're having a great day, night, whenever it is you're reviewing this. Thank you guys for joining me, and I look forward to my next Here For It, and I will see you all next week. Goodbye.